Hi, this is Penny Oates, and today I'd like to talk to you about mirroring and pacing, which is a very useful communication technique, particularly when you're talking to someone face to face, but it can be used to a lesser extent if you are talking to people or communicating with people via email or over the phone. So the first thing we need to look at is communication. Now, my blog post at www.onlinebusinessOpReview does go into in a little bit more detail the different types of communication that people use. But very briefly, we're talking about visual communication, auditory communication, and kinesthetic communication. If you're not quite sure what those means, then just look it up on the blog post now, because what I want to do is to show you how mirroring works in action. When I first started using this technique many years ago, I was a mortgage broker, so I would often be visiting a couple, which was a little bit more difficult. And I remember the first time that I really realised that it worked, I was using this technique, and both of the couples were different, had different ways that they communicated. One of the guys was very visual, so he was happy with somebody that talked fast, that I could show him a presentation, show him what it meant on paper, and he wanted to see how it all worked. And the lady was very kinesthetic. That means she was a touchy-feely sort of person. So she didn't like me speaking fast. She wanted it more explained and more feeling in it and slower, whereas he wanted me just to go on with the presentation, get on with it, show it what it was. So I was struggling a little bit. I identified very early on that he was visual, she was kinesthetic, but I was trying to sell something to both parties. So I remember doing a visual presentation, and when I got to the end of each page, I would turn to him and I would say, "How's that look to you?" And he would go, "That looks fine." And then I'd turn back to her, who was looking blank and not very happy about it, and I'd put my hand on her arm, because she's touchy-feely, and I'd say, "And how does that feel to you?" And a smile came over her face, and she said, "Oh, that feels right, it just feels right." And I realised there and then that was it. I could use mirroring to work for me, because I'd worked out how they communicated, and I'd managed to turn it round so that I was on a level with both people. I wasn't getting on with the husband and not the wife, or vice versa. And I've used mirroring ever since, and it can very much work to your advantage. What you need to look out for is the type of person that you are with. Once you've identified the type of person that you're with, you can use little mannerisms to help. So let's say somebody is always scratching their left ear. Without mimicking them, without taking the mickey, as you're talking to them, you could also be scratching your left ear. They won't see somebody taking the Michael, they'll see somebody that's like them. Or let's say somebody, when they're taking something in that you're saying to them, is looking at you like that. You need to turn it round so that you're looking at them like that, so they see somebody exactly like themselves. Once you have somebody, you've been mirroring them, so in other words, you're following their lead in everything they do, the way they cross their legs, the way they're sitting, whether it's slouched or whether it's sitting up and really paying attention. You're copying or mirroring exactly what they do. Once you have the report, you can test that. So let's say I'm listening to somebody like this, I've talked to them like this, they're listening to me, and I think I've got them. I think I've been mirroring them for long enough, and I'm going to test it. So I'm going to just move my hand slightly and perhaps itch or rub there. If you have them, unconsciously, without meaning to, that person will also move from there and start to copy your mannerism. So you know you have them. And by doing that, you start to lead the pace. That's why we call it pacing. And then you can lead them on to the solution that you're offering. So that's just a very, very brief look at mirroring and pacing. Anthony Robbins on his website has got lots and lots of audio, etc. about this, because he's absolutely brilliant at it. He's the one I bought the pack of CDs many years ago, and I looked at them, learnt from them, and have been using them ever since. So if you want to get it in depth, go to those audios. If not, and you want to try it for yourselves, just go and do it. You've absolutely nothing to lose. So that was pretty much it for the day. Just one more story before I go. I remember years ago, I was at a DIY store, and we had a stand in the entrance, and I think it was late Sunday afternoon. People weren't keen on stopping, and I was training a team of consultants how to do surveys and questionnaires with people, stopping them at the door. And my team were getting a little bit fed up because it was late Sunday afternoon and people were being a bit rude to them. And I started explaining to them about mirroring and how people tend to like people that are like themselves. And they needed to start unconsciously doing a little bit of mirroring. So somebody started to come into the entrance, and my team were laughing at me and saying, "Bet you can't mirror him." Well, I have to say it was a challenge, because this was the most miserable guy I'd ever seen in my life. He'd got his head down, he was not looking at anybody, and he just wanted to get on with things and get out of there. And as he was coming towards me, I walked towards him and I put my head down and I said hello, and he said hello, and it was so monotone and so boring. I proceeded to do the entire questionnaire in that monotone voice, with my head down, shoulders hunched, looking miserable. Then just towards the end, the closing line, I straightened up and smiled, and I had him, because he straightened up and smiled. He probably had never had anybody on his wavelength before, because nobody that miserable probably would. But at the end of the story, we actually did end up changing his mortgage and doing quite a lot for that guy. So it just shows you, so long as you get onto the same wavelength as somebody else, you can communicate with them. So thank you very much for your time. If you want more informative videos, or you want to have a look at some of the businesses I do and I will help people to succeed in, then look at the rest of this blog post. There'll be a link to my website, and that is www.onlinebusinessopreview.com. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.